You must be 16 years old to play billiards. No one under 16 is allowed in the lap lanes. Finish all of your dinner before you can have dessert. Chess club is only for children ages 7 and up. Rules are everywhere, and for children they can feel like arbitrary limits. What magical thing happens when children turn 16 that they are now responsible to play billiards or to swim in the lap lanes? Why can a 6-year-old child not be in chess club? What is wrong with eating just 75% of your dinner and then having some desserts? We're all raised with rules and limits. We know that some rules are helpful, and yet so many rules seem so arbitrary. So looking at rules placed on children, imagine if we had those type of rules for adults. My parents used to live in a 55-plus community, and so there were family swim times, so children under the age of 18 can only swim in the pool during family swim times. What if we went to a pool and it said, swimming rules, ages 0 to 18, swim from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., ages 19 to 29, swim from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., ages 30 to 54, swim from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., ages 55 to 70, swim from 3 to 5 p.m., and ages 71 plus, swim from 5 to 7 p.m. Seems crazy, right? Why don't they just be real with it? Swimming rules. Loud, noisy people who are going to splash can swim from 9 to 1. Quiet people who will be standing around the pool with their sunglasses on their heads and not really swimming get to swim from 1 to 4. And people who want to swim in the lap lanes swim from 4 to 7. My favorite thing to do during adult swim time is to swim with big kicks past the people standing around with their makeup and sunglasses on their heads. A swimming pool is for swimming, getting wet. If you don't want to get splashed, stay out of the pool. Wow, that sounds rather curmudgeonly of me, right? We raised our children in the homeschooling world, where learning things at particular ages does not matter, and where we have the freedom to live our lives in our own way. When our youngest was 4, she wanted to learn to play chess. I bought her a book with pictures and diagrams. It was a great Usborne chess book. She looked at the pictures and taught herself to play chess. When she was 5.5, our homeschool co-op started a chess club for kids ages 7 and up. She was not allowed to be in the chess club, even though I had agreed to be there with her and to be sure she was not disruptive. I knew that she would not be and that she'd be more focused than your average 7-year-old. Yet a young teen was leading the group, so they and their parents decided to stick with this age restriction. I don't think this helped anyone. It put a barrier up for my child and set in motion the idea that just because she is younger, there are certain things she cannot do. This is the same reason I never sent my oldest child to kindergarten. He was already reading before he was kindergarten age. With the cutoff of having to be 5 before October 15th, and he was nearly 6, and reading chapter books at that point, he would have been bored in kindergarten, at least as far as learning to read. I saw when he attended part-time preschool at age 4, and he was in the 3-year-old class because he turned 4 in November. And in a class full of young boys, almost a year younger than him, he did things like turn the water faucet so the water ran off the counter and onto the floor. The teacher saw him as curious, seeing how intelligent he was because he was walking around the room reading words, and the other boys would not even sit and hold a crayon to draw or color. Yet, he was curious, but also seeking attention and bored. He was there for part-time daycare. We called it preschool because it felt better to say that than daycare. I thought about putting him in the 4-year-old class, but realized he was not there for school, but to be cared for while me and Don were at work. He made a good friend in the preschool class. The other boy spoke clearly like my son did, unlike the other 3-year-olds whose speech was not developed yet. This is also why I figured out that he used to hang around with girls, because they tend to develop their speech earlier. So deciding who can participate in what activities based on age seems so silly to me. I wrote this years ago and I'm just trying to update it here. But as I watched, my youngest child, she's 7 years younger than her sister and 11 years younger than her brother. They participated in games. Um, and the older kids have an advantage, but they do a good job of keeping up and building on their strengths. We would go to our co op groups, and there were family oriented activities in the early years. And so everyone was included. And it just brings me back to thinking about a time when we had one room schoolhouses and that children learn from different age children. The older kids kind of sparked an interest in little kids. I know when our youngest was born, our 7 year old daughter and her friends, who are all around 7, 8, 9, like had this human baby doll to play with. And they were so excited to have this little baby around because they didn't have a younger sibling like our daughter did. And just the benefit of connecting and interacting with others of different ages and learning from them. It just opened my eyes up to how beautiful that can be and how we segregate people, especially in schools. You're born from this date to this date and this year, you're in this classroom. And it doesn't mean it's going to be a good fit for everybody. Um,
Hello, this is Don.
oh, I was going to
Are
finish.
you okay? Well,
Age,
I'm
res-
not Don then.
age restrictions are common for those under the age of 21. And yet, for those of us over 21, um, we hardly need to think about our age until we qualify for senior discounts. Yet, there is age discrimination for older individuals, and in particular, the elderly. Um, in our society, it's like
Joe
it is
reading.
like our society is saying it is ideal to be between the ages of 25 and 40. And outside of that range, well, you are less than ideal. There are hurdles, many hurdles for those
Mm.
50 and 60 and older, as well as those under 21, and even more hurdles for those under 18. Do we accept this class typing that our society places on us? So, hello, this is Gina
And this is Don.
with Focused Healthy Family. I was adapting a blog that I wrote in my child led learning blog. I entitled it Rules. I'll have to send you that link too, Don. I wrote that back in 2018. But today we're talking about living in multi generational communities. This is podcast number 224.
Today we're doing, I guess we're going to caregive. If I can hold, there you go. Caregiver 101. 101 crazy caregiving, 101 ways to keep caregiving from making you crazy. And this is tip number 90. Um, it's about seeking caregiving mentors and advisors. And we were talking about, you know, have a multi
Generational.
generational and finding those advisors out there that might be the senior to us or the junior of us. But
Mhm.
10% of American populations are active caregivers. We are everywhere. Ask others how they dealt with or are dealing with caregiving and other stressful situations in life. Use what you can and lose what you cannot.
Now,
Pretty
thinking
simple.
about assisting, seniors assisting young people, but young people assisting seniors. This is happening all the time with technology. I'm only 56, but I go to young people to deal with my phone. I had a Word document converted to Google document and it wasn't opening right at work. And I have two students from the community college who are like 18 and 19. I'm like, help me um, with technology. So that's another way.
Um,
Do you have a
so,
joke?
our jokes for today. Why did Beethoven get rid of his chickens?
Why did Beethoven get rid of his chickens? I don't know.
They all they ever say is buck, buck, buck. Um, why are mountains so funny?
Why are mountains so funny?
Yes,
I don't know why.
they're hilarious. Hilarious.
Yes, I got it.
Let's see if there's one more. Oh, why wasn't the cactus invited to hang out with the mushrooms?
Why wasn't the cactus invited to hang out with the mushrooms? I don't know.
He wasn't a fungi.
But bump.
Well, yeah, and this is kind of something. that I kind of caught up on this morning and talking about multi-generational was, and thinking about it, I hope in a way that's where we end up at some point, because I think it's a really cool idea. It's talking about mixing all different generations into a community. Uh, if you think about a neighborhood now, we have a little bit of that kind of going on here, but we're not joined together.
Well, you grew up, Don, and you were born in late 50s, and you grew up in the 50s and 60s. And, what do you remember in your neighborhood growing up? You could walk to your church that
We
was
and
in your neighborhood community. So you went to school together with the other neighborhood kids.
I mean, yeah, we didn't have we we talk about homeschool. When homeschool we had co-ops where it was multi-generational kids in there, and that was always something I kind of admired about that. They really learn off of each other, and can do a lot for each other. So I think this multi-general idea of a community would be good.
Can I go back to the question I was asking you about
Oh,
what do you remember from growing up in the 50s and 60s? Mostly the 60s, right? Times have changed,
yeah.
and kids used to, both you and I grew up in a time when we played outside, we ran around with neighborhood kids. There were kids of different ages. We played together. I'm thinking of your neighbors that lived across the street that would babysit you guys when your parents had somewhere to go and things. We had babysitters in our neighborhood. Um,
Well, I mean, I always think about the neighbor across the street, the Werfs. We weren't quite the Ethel and Lucy kind of thing where they just hop into each other's, but they would always come over and it's a quick and they'd be in the house and working on, and we'd be over there doing stuff.
and they were there, when your sister got sick and taken to the hospital quickly. You had someone, where the kids could go in a pinch like that, and had that support and help. My mom grew up. She was born in New York City, and her dad was drafted into World War II. I guess he was drafted before she was born or right after she was born. But they lived in an apartment in New York City with her grandparents. And so there was this multi-generational kind of living, right? This was a common thing not that long ago. And so you had grandparents looking after kids. There's other, cultures in the world that embrace this so much more fully and continue to do so, even in modern times. That you have grandparents to help watch kids and all this kinds of things. Well, as we move away from families, we don't have that support anymore, and we find ourselves segregated. Like you mentioned, our current neighborhood, it has a lot of older people and young families. They're kind of modest size homes that kind of attract both ends of the spectrum. And there's a few of us that are kind of in between that, with teenagers and young adults living with us. And yet we don't quite connect with our neighbors the way we used to. We've been in this neighborhood 2.5 years, and we've yet to connect with someone who can take care of our dog when we go out. Our last neighborhood, we had a neighbor across the street. There was actually multiple people that lived in that house, but they were always people with dogs, and we would always take care of looking after each other's
Yeah.
dogs when we were away. And so having that kind of support around, right, it can be so beneficial. So yeah, when
Well,
you talked about this multi-generational community living, Don, I mean, we touched on it when we were digging into the farming communities, and we looked at some of that kind of concept in that podcast we did not too long ago.
well, the one thing one of the notes I made on here, 'cause I mean, there's all kind benefits both for both ages here, the
Mm.
older and the one of the things I thought about is a little bit of an attitude adjustment needs to be done in a way. I mean, a lot of the neighbors we have here, they don't always put up with kids and the noise and all that
Well,
kind of
like the
stuff,
55 plus community that restricts,
Yeah.
kids swimming at a certain time. And I get it that sometimes they want quiet, and yet for me, if I lived in that community, I would love having the little kids around. Like I would go to
Yeah.
swim times purposefully when the little kids were there. Even now, as a mid 50s-year-old woman with grown children and no grandchildren, I get excited when I have the opportunity to be around little kids. I've always liked little kids. And,
Well,
when our kids were young, I've worked in senior care for a long time. I started in adult rehabilitation, but then found my way working in more of geriatric settings and rehabilitation, nursing homes, things like that. And, I saw how excited most seniors, not all, get when little kids come around, especially if their family doesn't live close. They don't get to see their own grandkids, great grandkids very often. And so some other homeschool families and I decided once a month we went to, it was called Little Flower in Charlotte Mint Hill area. It's actually an assisted living facility. And we met up with the activities director there, and we went once a month and did activities with the residents. And so it's a small community, and their activity room, the residents could come if they wanted to. As we got comfortable there, we'd go down and knock on the doors and invite people to come. We got to know some of the residents really well. And we did games and crafts and activities. Our kids got to, even though they were young, got to help these seniors do these craft projects and things because, some of them had difficulty, whether it was because of dementia or difficulty using their hands or something. And I just valued that time so much because I saw that benefit of, at the time, my parents were a couple hours away. And even while your mom was living, she was, Missouri, and we're in North Carolina,
mm.
to not be able to see grandparents regularly. So I used to call it something like, visiting our adopted grandparents or something to that effect that, we gained benefit as those residents there.
Well, you've talked about it before, but I don't remember which location you were at where there was a daycare center kind of in the middle of the
So yeah, it's in Charlotte. It's called the Laurels in the Haven. It's in the Highland Creek area of North Charlotte. It's an assisted living community, and I'm not sure how it was built, but there's an assisted living building, and there's a memory care, but it's a separate building, and it's on the other side of a daycare. And there was a little walk pathway. So when I worked there, I often had to go to both buildings, and I loved to walk because I walked right past the daycare and their playground, and the little kids would be out there playing, and I enjoyed waving at them and watching them play. I haven't dug this information up, but the idea of where there's daycares and senior cares combined. You have adult daycare, you have senior community centers, and having those near daycares, just having that interaction of multi generations.
well, I was thinking about the other one of the other notes I wrote in here is that you know, as we get older, we tend to want to shed some stuff that we have, as kids move out or whatever, you want to shed different furniture, different things. And if you think about it, if you have a community where there's new people coming in that maybe first time they bought a home, they don't always have the money to buy, everything they need right at the moment. So it becomes kind of a I don't know if I'd say a trade-off, but a rebalancing. One is letting go and the other is picking up what, and it doesn't mean to always be that way, but it's kind of a way of I don't know, regifting your the stuff that you have. I don't know
Well,
if
and it's
does that make
building an
sense?
extended family. It's going back to the roots of living near extended family, having that around you, even though you're not biologically related to these people, right? So having that extended family community where you can pass on things that you don't need anymore to new people who might. And,
Hmm.
we did have a neighbor at our first house that worked part time at a daycare, and she watched our oldest when he was little, and she called him Stanker, um, with her southern accent. Um, and it was someone we'd known a long time, and having that support for things like that. Kind of is what you're talking about, right, Don? And I know, and I looked this article that you brought up, the benefits of multi-generational living in households, and there's actually neighborhoods that they're building with this in mind. And I find it very intriguing. I did some diving on it to kind of learn more about it, and I found a Forbes magazine article that talked about family friendly design, building communities for multi-generational living. And it talked about it from the perspective of construction and how to build it and things like that. But it talked about, having multi-income level housing in one place, which is, not very common,
Yeah.
right? And having, accessible one story homes. Like now there's all these 55 plus communities out there. And even if it's not a community, the houses are built with that in mind. They're one level typically homes, they're flat entry, not having to have stairs to go inside. But having multi generational means you've got a playground there. You've got maybe an activity center, in the community. It talks about having shops and there's some places I can think of in Charlotte that have, houses, and some are townhouses and other houses. And you can walk to shops and different things like Birkdale up in Huntersville and other communities like this. But I think this is taking it, an additional step further.
Well, and like a community garden would be
Yeah,
something that would be, because
right.
that's what, when I think about some of, and I don't know if you've seen, but it'd be nice in nursing homes if they had some kind of a fairly good sized garden that if people wanted to, they could come out and
And
work it,
some do, and some do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the community garden idea. Just we're going to share a YouTube video that I found that was a PBS piece that was done about a multi-generational kind of community living. In that it talked to, the one person in there, her spouse had died. She didn't have a lot of money to live in a, whatever. She went to this community where she was able to get a smaller home, but then she started looking after someone's kids, and maybe bringing an income in that way. I'm not sure exactly what the story, but having that ability to support each other and help each other in different ways.
Well, and they talk about in there for the adults, the older generation is that like home repairs and things like that, then a lot of times can be done like we've done here in our own neighborhood, getting a young kid that's just starting out that you don't have to pay him a lot of money, but he can come and help do some repairs or different things in the household.
When we had our chip drop, I think we told that story, and we had who knows how many tons of mulch on our
Mm.
driveway in the middle of the hot summer because we didn't know it'd be arriving when it did. And you asked around, and we got someone's young teen to come and paid him money to help spread the chips out. Yeah, so having, you think about old elderly people and kids in the neighborhood shoveling snow for them. I mean, I think about that from growing up north, but we also had some big snowstorms here in North Carolina this past winter, where people, said, I can loan you a shovel if you need it. And people pitched in because we were literally snowed in because of these storms that came along. And because it's not common, people connected with each other over that. But having that opportunity even more, right? You also talk about the benefits of gaining wisdom from your elders, right?
Yeah, which we don't I don't think we give enough credit to that either, to our elders and what they can share with us. It would be nice. I mean, I think we do share it sometimes, but it needs to be broader than it is now, I think.
Well, and my pet peeve is people complaining about kids these days and this generation doesn't understand. It really hits a nerve with me because we can learn so much from the younger generation. They are growing up in a very different time than
Mm,
we are. And you can't make assumptions about kids and being
mm.
lazy and all these kinds of things because you can go back in time and find problems with all generations. It's challenging to grow up right now. Social media, we had to deal with COVID. I mean, there's so much out there that makes it a lot more challenging. I wouldn't want to be a teenager right now. I mean, would you, Don? Growing up
No.
in this time period, dating in this time period, having to go dating apps and things.
Um,
We met the good old fashioned way at a bar and our
at a
singles
bar.
group. Well, it was
It wasn't
wasn't
was it a
quite,
restaurant?
but um
It was a restaurant.
it was. But first we met There was like a lounge area before we
in
went
in
back
the
to eat.
restaurant.
And then we went out afterwards. We went to some clubs. Does that bother you for me to say that?
Oh, I don't want to. Yeah, no, I'm joking. It's fine.
Um, I've totally lost my train of thought now. But so we can all learn from each generation, right? And I just like to step outside of that kind of mindset, that kind of those stuck ideas that there's problems with young kids and old people are set in their ways and they are not open to change and don't have open minds. And there's maybe some truth for some people to some extent. It's like older people are wiser. Well, I meet plenty that are kind of stuck in their anxiety of their past.
Yeah,
They have as much anxiety as my teenagers do, and they're like in their 70s. We all have different things that we bring with us, different baggage, different experiences, different personalities. And so I just challenge you, if you've ever said that, made those comments, whether it be, these kids are too young for this, or what's wrong with this generation of kids, well, look at yourself. We are the product of our previous generation and how we were raised and how we parent our kids. And I know people will say, oh, well, the parents, they don't give their kid a good whipping, or, that show them what's good and what's right, which is another thing that sets me off because, yeah. Growing up being disciplined out of fear creates a whole new set of problems. We won't delve in that today. Um, I wrote another article on mutual respect. It's a two-way street. We need to respect people of different ages and generations to get respect from them. We can't just like tell your kid, you need to respect me if you're not treating them
yeah.
respectfully. And so this goes hand in hand with this idea of um, living with people of different ages and taking away that segregation, that can happen. Um, and it can lead to isolation. Seniors who grow up, their family moves out, maybe they never had kids, or their other family members have died and they're lonely. And that's a really big problem in the senior community. I did find, we'll link this as well. I just looked up Adopt a Grandparent, and there's actually a website called adoptagrandparent.org. And, its idea of connecting elderly people who don't have family, and you can send them mail and videos and messages and to kind of support them, and to
Well,
connect with someone who doesn't have those people in their lives. Just like you can go visiting, if you want to go visit nursing homes, assisted living facilities, any kind of senior communities, think about going other than the holidays. They get so many visitors and things at the holidays, but think about how can you, make a trip, even if you can't do monthly, like I did with my kids, in the middle of the summer, or, at another random time of the year to do a visit, can be
well, it's
really
hard.
helpful and beneficial, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think sometimes it's hard to get in people's mind out, like you say, outside the holidays, and plus we're so busy nowadays, and the fact that we have to be able to take time, and that's part of what I think we've talked about it, and taking care of ourselves too, is that's part of giving to the community also helps us too to kind of balance ourselves out. So I think it's important to take time. We probably need to do more of it now too, as we hopefully slow ourselves down a little bit with life. Um,
Well, and thinking about, living in a community where there's a community garden, like I'm trying to grow some vegetables right now, but sometimes I don't. In the past years when kids were younger and I tried to grow gardens, I remember like I'd have the garden growing and then your mother got sick and we had to go to St. Louis and then things died because we were gone, and, different things happen. And thinking about if it's a community garden, everyone's pitching in, everyone's helping, so that if you get really busy or, bogged down with work or kids or something happening like that, some other people step in and taking care of things, so that you all have the benefit of those fresh vegetables. Another thing I found is they call them multi-generational and intentional communities. It's
What does the intentional mean? That was you mentioned that earlier.
well, as far as kind of spiritual development, you know, making I don't know. I just looked this up.
Well, I'm wondering if it could.
Fostering that close knit and a supportive environment. So this is a place that's safe, that's supportive. Not segregating, not
Mhm.
non-judgmental, where people feel accepted. Us doing things intentionally versus just living. Because this is the way you have to do it, right? Thinking ahead about things. There are some places in North Carolina. There's the Atawahi Wellness Village in Columbus, North Carolina. It focuses on wellness, healing, and spiritual development with an on-site and a B&B and a wellness center. There's Living Well Eco Village in Franklinville, North Carolina, located about 30 minutes outside of Greensboro, focusing on social, cultural, economic, and environmental sustainability. There's Arcadia Co-housing in Carborough, North Carolina, which was established in 2001. This community focuses on co-housing, social justice, and shared resources. And it's either Cello or Cello community in Yancey County, North Carolina, is one of the oldest land trusts in the county, fostering community living on 1,200 acres. So I'd have to look up more information about those places. But just realizing these things are out here. I mean, as we're reading this, I'm going, wow, I wish we would have researched this before we moved and bought this house. Just finding, these kind of
Yeah.
communities that are out there. Because, yeah, things happen. Your loved one goes in the hospital, who helps out? I mean, we had our good friends, even though people don't live as close anymore, came and helped us out. But building that sense of community and having that, just can see the benefits of that.
Well, you mentioned like the adopted grandparent, but it kind of even goes back to I belonged to was it I was the
Oh,
brother,
Big Brothers and
big
Big
brother, big
Sisters
sisters.
program.
That's another sharing multi-generational because I was
A young adult
I was
is
probably
paired
30
with a
and
child
child, yeah,
who maybe lost a parent or is growing up in a difficult situation or for
yeah.
whatever reason needs kind of an additional adult in their lives. Because I looked into doing the program as well. In fact, that's how you got my phone number when we met. Is you told me about that program and I wanted to know more about it. Um,
Well, I thought it was the show,
the show.
the Al and
No, I gave you my phone number because I wanted to learn more about the Big
oh,
Brothers program.
oh, that's
And because I was new to Charlotte, they, said I wasn't a candidate yet because I was still, adjusting as a young adult,
yeah.
had newly moved to a new state and city, and didn't pursue that further. But yeah, there are different programs and things like this out there. And I'm sure, and I'm going to research this more, that there are
They're all over the
community
country, I'm
centers
sure.
that incorporate seniors and young people. I'm not nearly very common because I can't think of any or know of any myself. In our areas, we know there's senior centers all over the place, and there are youth centers for kids. But yeah, I want to research out there, and if you know of one, or you can connect us with that person.
Yeah, we'd love to have them on and talk
Yes,
about it too.
as we're exploring these new different topics here, we're going to be looking for people to interview to discuss these topics more in depth because there's so many interesting things out there that we can all learn about. And so I'd love to hear from you if you have any more insight or information about that.
So we thank you for joining us today. We hope that what we talked about today is something that you can share with others. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to have you subscribe to us too. But we'd love to hear your comments to see where we can go the next time we come up with a podcast. And if you feel like stress and panic and overwhelm are becoming part of your life, and you really want to think about my discovery series that talks about EFT. A lot of times people say that it's weird, but what if they really work with me, they start to realize that it works. So, if you're interested in that, check out our website. You can find all of our stuff on the Focus Healthy Family site. And you can also find that podcast on focushealthyfamilypodcast.com. But you can find all of that. You can, if you want to do some work with me, you can book your information there. Um, I'm also able to speak to your organization, whether it's a organization or a caregivers group or healthcare teams. Um, Talk about the practical ways to kind of reduce stress and calm themselves during this time. For more information about that, you can um, check us out on the Focus Healthy Family website. You can also connect with us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, at Instagram, Focused Healthy Family 1, and YouTube at Focused Healthy Family. Having said all of that, just remember how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.